Welcome to the introduction to freedom-based training. Freedom-based training is a system of training that is quite literally what it sounds like. While it's a bit of a contradiction in terms to use the words freedom and training in the same description, it is in combining these two ideas that I believe we develop the best possible partnership between horses and humans, while at the same time developing each individual into the best version of themselves. My name is Elsa Sinclair, and I've been in love with horses for as long as I can remember. When a horse shares a little of their grace with you, a little of their speed and their power and their strength, for that moment, you become part of an experience that could only happen because your horse chooses to be connected to you. Yes, that is video footage of me riding when I was just a small child. The reasons that a horse might choose to be connected with a human in any particular experience, of course, vary greatly. How both the horse and the human feel about that connection as they share any experience is also going to vary greatly, due to how that choice was developed. In this introduction to freedom-based training, we're going to explore some of the foundation theories to this method that I developed while I filmed the first Taming Wild movie. But first, I want to share a story with you about how the idea for the film came about. I grew up riding and training horses from about the age of 7. And my mother ran a cooperative that rescued horses and taught children to ride. From an early age, I was exposed to a huge variety of horse training and people teaching puzzles, really. It was a way of life for me. 30-some years later, I was still exploring and teaching and developing horses using many different styles of training as I continued to learn and grow and share what I understood. And that's when a student asked me a question, and it was a question that changed everything for me. She said, "Do you think horses really enjoy being ridden?" And I said, "Yeah, I think they do." So she asked again, "What if they hadn't been trained to it from birth? What if they had an independent sense of who they are and they knew they had a choice about being ridden?" And I thought for a moment and I said, "Yeah, people bring Mustangs in off the range all the time. And even at older ages, they train those Mustangs to be really great riding companions." So she asked me again, "Do you really think horses know they have a choice?" At that moment, all of a sudden, I had no answer. And those were the questions that led me to develop freedom-based training. At first, it was an experiment to see what was possible when horses were given more freedom in training. As I experimented, I filmed the movie and I charted the development of these theories in the blog Meditations on Equestrian Art. Then, when the results of the experiment were better than anything I'd anticipated, there really was no turning back for me. This was more fun than I had ever had with horses. In planning the movie and the development of freedom-based training, I knew that I needed to be forced out of my patterns. I needed a horse that knew their own mind and that had their own independent, free spirit. I needed to learn how to build a relationship from the ground up, without coercion, without force. Myrna, as a 4-year-old untouched Mustang from the Oregon ranges, was my perfect teacher for this. Now, since the film, I have applied everything I learned with Myrna to both domestic and wild horses of all varieties around the world and found that the theories are good, no matter the background the horse comes from. I respect that there are times and places for freedom in all reaches of society. We often trade our freedom for jobs that we might not love, which, in exchange for our effort, lets us live more luxurious lives. A job hopefully pays the bills and affords us a quality of life that we appreciate. This actually goes for both horses and humans. Horses appreciate having their hay cut and cured and stored to be fed to them at optimal freshness. They appreciate having water available anytime they're thirsty. They appreciate a good wind block that they can count on when the weather turns wild. And I even believe that horses appreciate the diversity and entertainment that humans bring into their lives. In order for horses to enjoy all of these things, they need to submit to the rules of society. They need to work their job, which is usually finding a way to partner with people and carry them around. Now, in the normal world of horses and people, we send them to school to become trained to jobs that they do using halters or food rewards or small pens, and a horse learns that it is not free. The horse needs to work for a living, and they need to become trained to being a functioning part of society. If the training is complete enough, eventually they're allowed out of their confinements, and they know the routine, and they may even enjoy it. None of this is wrong or bad. It's just the way our society works. Freedom-based training is a different way to approach horses and humans working together. Freedom-based training asks, do we actually need to take freedom away from horses before they're willing to develop partnerships with humans? What might develop between a horse and a human if we spent even a few extra minutes a day training without the normal confinements, without the tools or the spaces to pressure them, without the food rewards to motivate them? What I've found is the more time we spend training in freedom, the deeper the bond between horse and person becomes. In freedom, it takes far more time to see progress, and it's emotionally challenging to really listen to our horses, even when they express things that we don't want to hear. I believe the rewards of working this way far outweigh the costs. The better I get at the work, the more exponentially rewarding I find my time with horses becomes. Now, having said all this, I still believe there's a place and a time for going to work and doing a job and finding one's place in society. Any of you who choose to do an hour of freedom-based training work and then bridle your horse to go for a trail ride, you have my full support. And I need you to know you get to decide how much time you spend in freedom is unique to you. It's unique to your horse, and it's unique to the society that you live in. I'm only presenting the idea that the hours that you choose to do freedom-based work will be really well spent and worth every moment you invest. You will find your relationship with your horse is so much richer for the investment in time spent together in freedom. Take the time and find out. I promise you it's worth it. Now, for those of you who choose immersion and you choose only to do freedom-based work with your horses, be prepared for a very slow, meditative process. This is a more challenging path, and while it's worth everything you put into it, it also calls for a mental fortitude and presence and persistence and patience that's remarkable and life-changing. I believe the best year of my life so far was the year that I immersed myself in the process with Myrna. Now, filming the second and third Taming Wild movies, Pura Vida and Evolution, has proved to be more of an exercise in flexibility for me, where some use of tools and a little less freedom proved the wisest course for those horses. And I share this with you all to be absolutely clear. Safety always comes first. Training in freedom is the best work I've ever done with horses. But it only comes after the horse and the human feel safe enough together to share space in freedom. That's when I feel the real fun begins. The freedom-based training course is about fostering depth of relationship. You get to choose how deep you are ready to go. You get to decide how much freedom you and your horse are ready to explore together. I'm here to support you. So the big concept here is utilizing freedom in training develops a stronger bond between horse and human. And now that you have an idea of what freedom-based training is, I'd like to talk about leadership. I believe a feeling of safety needs to be our priority in our relationships. And I believe leadership creates that feeling of safety. You might ask, why does leadership create a feeling of safety? Both humans and horses are more comfortable in community, and to be alone feels less safe, while being part of a group feels safer. Groups or partnerships are formed around leaders. This is our inherent way of being. Luckily for us, both horses and humans seem to agree on this. There are all sorts of ways to describe a leader, but I use the most basic description. A leader makes a decision that others can accept. To form a group or a partnership, someone has to make a decision, and then someone has to agree or make a counter decision, continuing on until agreement is reached. In a partnership, there's always a leader and a follower. The two partners might shift back and forth the responsibility of making decisions, but in order for there to be a connection, one has to decide and the other has to agree. It is this connection about decision-making that forms a partnership. Leadership and friendship are two sides of the same coin, and we need to understand both. I believe a good follower is a good friend. And I do tend to use the word friend and follower somewhat interchangeably. These are the two basic components we need to stay aware of in building relationship: the quality of our friendship and the quality of our leadership. Leadership is something we hear about all the time in horse training, and we hear all sorts of things about how horses are looking for leaders, and horses are happier when they have good leaders. Statements like these can become rationale for abuse, simply because we have limited education in what a leader is. I want to be clear at the outset that I both believe the statements, and I also do not condone the abuse that people often use in the effort to become a leader. I use the terms passive leader and dominant leader, and I believe the differences are worth looking into. The differences between the two are very simple. Dominant leaders fight for their leadership position. Passive leaders are smart about where to be and make personal decisions that others take note of. If we strip away all the human tools for training a horse, all of a sudden we find ourselves not strong enough or fast enough or big enough to play the dominant leader with a horse. We have to learn how to become a passive leader. In my courses, I teach about a whole spectrum of different leadership styles. But to start, we think about passive and dominant being the two opposite sides of the spectrum. Friendship, or being a follower to our horse, starts with the idea that we're going to do our best to make our horse more comfortable. Friends scratch spots that you can't reach. Friends stick with you in the face of danger, facing that danger or running away together. Friends are good companions. Friends know where to be, close when you feel close and farther away when you want space. Friends are adaptable to the variations of what one might want in a friend on different days, in different moods. Friends adapt to the situation, and they figure out how to help make each situation more comfortable. Now, leadership is about helping our horses adapt to some discomfort in order to be happier in the long run. Leaders are going to find itchy spots a horse didn't even know it had. Leaders watch and go investigate danger so the other horses can relax, knowing that it's handled. Leaders are interesting companions. Leaders take actions that create connection and trust in the long run, regardless of how comfortable or uncomfortable that is in the moment. Leaders push boundaries and help others become comfortable in a greater variety of situations. I believe leaders build trust and create a sense of safety, while friends build companionship and a sense of comfort. A horse's desire to feel safe comes first, and only once they feel safe are they interested in comfort. Before we get into all the leadership style options, let's talk about some leadership basics. First, leaders watch the environment more than they watch the other horses or their friends. So start to hone your skill of looking at your horse briefly and then back to noticing your surroundings. Use your peripheral vision. Notice everything. Be the first one to alert when there's a strange sound or movement. Go check it out or stand closer to it than your horse. The ease and relaxation your horse will gain from your awareness is profound. This is something very simple that you can give to them as a leader that will help them feel much safer. Second, leaders only ask questions that will get yes answers. Dominant leaders will fight for that yes answer. Passive leaders are smart about choosing where to be so that others easily accept their decision of where to stand, where to walk, or where to run. If you want to be a passive leader and you think the answer is going to be no, for example, some horses don't like you on the right side, or they don't like you behind them, or they don't like you in front of them. If their answer is going to be no, choose something different. I talk more about how to get yes answers in different ways throughout my courses because my goal in freedom-based training is to train without dominance. But regardless of what kind of leader you choose to be, the fact remains leaders get yes answers. Third, leaders make decisions. Notice what percentage of the time you're making decisions that your horse can agree with, and what percentage of the time you're just letting things happen, agreeing with your horse's decision. When your horse moves first and you adapt, you're being a good friend or a follower. When you move and your horse adapts to you, you're being a good leader. I'm going to suggest that you make an effort to always take the last step around your horse. This last step before finding harmony establishes you as the passive leader in that moment. Perpetually making the first and last movements around your horse before finding harmony is the way that we passively earn trust and make horses feel safer. Fourth is confidence and rhythm. Horses are drawn to confidence. It's the strongest magnetism there is. Rhythmic movements and rhythmic breathing are the outward signs of confidence. The more steady, predictable, and rhythmic your actions, the more confident you will become, and the more horses will want to be in your circle of influence. Now, fifth, the last point here, when horses reach out to touch with their nose, they are asking you to make things easier in that moment. This is a concept I go into much more deeply in my courses, but for now, I just ask you to respect that. If you let your horse touch your hand with their nose, think to yourself, how do I take a couple of breaths to make my horse more comfortable in this moment? Now let's talk about different ways to be a leader. The leadership continuum stretches from passive through assertive into dominant. Passive leadership is where the leader moves their own body with good decision-making skills, and the followers feel no need to make a counter decision. Assertive leadership is where the leader asks the follower to move their body in a particular direction and gets a yes answer. Dominant leadership is where the leader asks the follower to move their body in a particular direction and is ready to create whatever discomfort is necessary to get that yes answer. I believe that leadership is a fluid state, and horses are fairly comfortable moving back and forth between the passive, the assertive, and the dominant conversations, as well as moving between different roles of follower and leader. The goal for this first week is to observe and become aware of who is being the leader and who is being the follower in any given moment. Leaders make decisions that get yes answers. Followers adapt to decisions that get made around them. As you watch your patterns and habits with your horse, remember as a leader, you will make your horse feel safer. As a follower, you will give your horse companionship and comfort. This week, I want you to practice being a passive leader as much of the time as possible. Throughout all of my courses, I talk about when and how and why to be one type of leader or another. In the beginning stages, I just want you to take stock of what is happening now. Who is the leader most of the time? Could you find subtle ways to be a passive leader more of the time? The big concept here is the differences between leaders and followers. So now that we've outlined the big leadership ideas, let's look more deeply at how leaders get yes answers. This picture is from Myrna and I's first year together. And as we were out in the snow, away from all the fenced areas, it was very important that we had established her desire to say yes to me. All of us, horses and humans, go through 3 stages of learning: tolerance, acceptance, enjoyment. Every new experience starts by being tolerated. If the horse does not feel overwhelmed, the experience develops into a stage of acceptance. Then, if the horse still does not feel overwhelmed, it develops into a state of enjoyment. And that's the goal. Anytime the horse starts to feel stress about the new subject, the stages start to move in the opposite direction, from enjoyment to acceptance to tolerance, and eventually intolerance. Any experience can become overwhelming or stressful if it goes on for too long. The way we coach a horse toward the stage of enjoyment is to use advance and retreat, experiencing a little bit of the new thing, then retreating to something familiar, and then advancing in the new experience again for a reasonable amount of time. In an ideal world, we're always helping the horse get closer to enjoyment or learning to enjoy things more fully. If we can be associated with things feeling better, our horses will choose to be with us more and more of the time. Progress is never as linear as we would like it to be. So sometimes things get worse before they get better. But if we can be aware of the trend and we can foster more enjoyment, our horses will appreciate this. For some things, a horse will move through the 3 stages in a matter of minutes. For other things, it will take a lot longer. If it's taking too long, we want to consider, are there other ways to learn the same thing? Or are there similar things that we could learn? Or could we break it down and learn a small piece of this and then another small piece? Tolerance is where every new skill starts. Tolerance is where you can do something, but only for a small amount of time. In the stage of tolerance, we use the concepts of advance and retreat, advancing into the new skill and then retreating to something more comfortable before anyone gets upset. When we make mistakes with our timing and we back off while the horse is upset or defensive, we need to come back to it directly. Try again, this time with more tact, better timing, so we end on a better note, a better feeling. The horse remembers best the final feeling it had in association with any experience. When we're training with a halter or a bridle or a small fenced-in area, or even the promise of a food-type reward, we have the capability to hold a horse to their new skill through any feelings of being upset and out the other side into acceptance again. Our stages of learning would then include intolerance. Dominance training allows us to push the horse through intolerance and then back into tolerance or acceptance. With freedom-based training, we don't have anything to force a horse to do something that it doesn't want to do. If we try and hold them to a new skill against their will, they may just walk away, or they may strike out at us to let us know that we're pushing too hard. Use advance and retreat so that those things don't happen. With freedom-based training, we have to avoid going to the place of intolerance by introducing things slowly, using advance and retreat to keep the learning process reasonable for our horses from the start to the finish. When we work with no tools, we have to aim to retreat to a more comfortable skill before we hit resistance or upset. Resistance or upset is a no answer from the horse. And be patient with yourself here. This is a skill for you too, and it's going to take time to develop. Sometimes we have to make some mistakes before we get good at things. This practice is as much about learning or improving your innate sense of timing as it is about developing your horse. Tolerance with enough advance and retreat will grow into acceptance, where a horse can do their new skill for longer or even indefinitely without complaint. Once you're in the stage of acceptance, you can retreat to a more comfortable skill anytime and reinforce that stage of acceptance. Or you can persist for a moment of enjoyment and then retreat or change activities in that moment of enjoyment. The last thing that happens in practicing any skill tends to become the lasting impression. So the most important thing here is end on a good note. Ask yourself, is this getting worse or is this getting better? End on the best note you can find. End on the strongest yes answer that you can find. When you're thinking about a session with your horse, ask yourself the very important question. What percentage of the time do you think you get yes answers from your horse? And what percentage of the time do you think you get an answer of no from your horse? And how do you think you might improve that feel and timing the next time you're with your horse? The big concept here is understanding tolerance, acceptance, and enjoyment, and the timing of advance and retreat, and getting yes answers. Now that we understand the stages of learning, tolerance to acceptance to enjoyment, we need to get good at reading the horse's body language. If you can have in mind a whole list of positive body signs, those will show you the best timing for retreat and the best way to foster future enjoyment. A great deal of reading your horse is an intuitive sense. If you pay attention, you will get a feeling as to whether your horse is feeling better or is feeling worse, or is on an improving or degrading trend. Don't overthink this. Trust your sense of things. Then check your horse's body language and look for the tangible physical signs. Their ears, their eyes, their tail, their facial expression, their body posture, their skin tone, and their movements, whether they're rhythmic or not. Our goal as a friend to our horse is to follow the horse's lead, be interested in their decisions, and invest time in ways that improve the horse's feelings of well-being. Our goal as a leader is to make decisions that our horses can say yes to. Invest time and increase the variety of ways a horse can feel good. There's no absolute here. There's no black or white. There's shades of intensity and degrees of better or worse. We are simply aiming for some degree of better. Horse movements are linked to emotions, so we can start to read what their emotions are through their movements and postures. For example, a horse swishes its tail to get rid of insects on its body, insects that are annoying in nature. So you will tend to see the same sort of tail swishing when a horse is feeling annoyed for any reason. Head tossing is also usually related to getting insects off a horse's face. And so the behavior will again come up in other situations when a horse is feeling annoyed. A horse will paw the ground to break through snow and find food, or to break up the prickles on a thistle before it braves eating that thorny, tasty weed. It stands to reason that you will often see a horse pawing at the ground in the same way when it wants something that it does not have yet. A foal, when it's nursing from its mother, will nudge at her udder to get the milk flowing. That's another body movement that you'll see in horses when they want something that they don't have yet. So anytime you see a body movement that you don't understand, think back to where it may have originated and what the feeling may have been at the time. With any movement, check the rhythm. That's going to tell you the level of confidence that the horse is feeling in the moment. Rhythm equals confidence. Body posture is all about comfort. We can tell a great deal about a horse's comfort level in their own skin by how they stand and how they move. Some of that comfort will be physical in nature. For example, a neck or a back that's hurting. And some of it's going to be emotional in nature. The emotional and the physical are going to be intrinsically linked and can be approached and helped from either direction. We're going to notice things like how often a horse stands square with a hoof symmetrically placed at each corner. Stability is comfort. We will notice when they cock a hip and rest a toe on the ground. How often is it the right toe, and how often is it the left toe? Equal ease left and right is comfort. We will notice the level of the head in relation to the body, as that lets us know where the eyes are focused. Horses' eyes are like trifocal glasses. When their head is high, they can see clearly a long way away, and the middle distance and the close distances will be somewhat blurry for them. When their head is level with their body, they can see the middle distance very clearly, while far away and very close are blurry. When their head is low, like it is in a grazing position, the horse is able to see up close very clearly, while the middle and far distances are blurry and less clear. We will notice when the horses move from one posture to another, and what is the rhythm of the movements like. Rhythm equals confidence. We will notice whether the skin tone of the horse is more tight and braced or more loose and at ease. The facial expressions as well will also show tightness or ease. Are there wrinkles around the eyes or the nose? Is one nostril held higher than the other? Is there stillness that shows a braced state? Or are there small natural movements that show ease? Yawning and licking and chewing are body signs that are debated by many professional animal trainers. When I take all of the opinions together and I look at the trends, this is what I think. Licking and chewing is a sign that the horse is starting to feel a little better than it was a moment before. If we look at yawning as an extension of licking and chewing, or an extreme version of it, the same would be true, only to a greater degree. I simply look at yawning as an extreme change in comfort level, for the better. I seem to notice that a horse whose mouth twitches perpetually is close to feeling better and releasing into a lick and a chew or a yawn. They're almost ready, but not quite ready to let down into an easier, more relaxed state. Some horses learn that they feel better when they yawn and lick and chew, and so they will make the body movements in an effort to make themselves feel better, even when they don't yet. A big, deep sigh breath is usually the thing that reveals they are truly feeling better. Lastly, we get the ears. Ears are the first body signs that people are taught to read with horses. Ears forward equals happy. Ears back equals mad. Those are the basics, but we should touch on some of the other variations and interpretations. I like to think of ears pointing toward what a horse is thinking about. Ears are for listening, and eyes and ears work together for a horse. In the English language, we say, I am looking forward to something, and that means I am happy about something coming up. I wonder if that relates to our evolution with horses and their tendency to be happy when their ears are forward. When we are angry, we tend to be angry about something that just happened, that looking back in time, listening to something behind us in time. It's like the ears back and pinned position for a horse. The middle position for the ears for horses are varying degrees of relaxed, thoughtful, and considering. Some of the middle positions for the ears may seem somewhat forward or backward in a thoughtful, relaxed way. And that's different than the baseline ideas that we were first taught about ears being happy or being angry. What I find most important when watching a horse's ears, regardless of the positioning, is the movement. When we are building a relationship with someone, adaptability and flexibility are very important traits. I feel you can see that in a horse's ears. Ear movement is about adaptability, and adaptability is something that creates ease in relation to the environment and to friends. With the ears, as with every other body movement and signal, confidence is the key thing we look for when we want to know how a horse is feeling. Rhythm equals confidence. The last piece about reading your horse that I want to talk about is focus. All the parts of your horse's body give us clues as to what the horse is focusing on. It's been my observation that the happiest, emotionally stable horses change focus often. Horses are designed to be reading their environment. perpetually to gauge how safe they are in it. I believe the intrinsic good feeling that comes from noticing things in a balanced, steady way is hardwired into a horse. Rhythm equals confidence. So when we notice a horse changing focus easily from one thing to another, that can be a sign that they're feeling better than they would if they were fixated on only one thing. In my courses, we study what focus changes mean in depth. For now, to begin with, simply notice what your horse might be feeling from moment to moment, and do your best to make changes on the best feelings possible. Ask yourself, what are some of the things you read in your horse often? Are you familiar with how your horse looks when it feels better, or when it is about to feel better? The big concept here is just this full range of body awareness. Now that we're reading the horse, how do we use that information to build the kind of relationship we would like? I think the answer to that lies in an understanding of stress. The beauty of stress is important. In our society, we've come to believe stress is a bad thing. However, I believe stress is on a spectrum. On that spectrum, stress can either be positive or negative in our lives. Without some stress, there is no learning. Without some stress, there is nothing interesting to catch our attention. Without some stress, we cannot get stronger. However, too much stress is damaging. With too much stress, learning goes hand in hand with trauma. With too much stress, what was interesting becomes frightening. With too much stress, we break or injure instead of getting stronger. How do we know how much stress is positive and at what point stress becomes negative? I believe that's where we need to learn to read the coping mechanisms for stress: fight, flight, and freeze. Each one of these coping mechanisms has functional and not so functional displays on the spectrum of stress. The display of a coping mechanism will give you a clue as to how positive or negative a horse's level of stress might be. Flight can be displayed functionally when a horse simply and easily moves away from discomfort. Or it can be displayed in a dysfunctional way in the form of bolting at high speed with no thought of whatever obstacles lie in the path of travel. Fight can be displayed functionally when a horse is playful. Or it can be displayed dysfunctionally in an attack of hooves and teeth. Freeze can be displayed functionally when a horse pauses for a long moment to think before taking action. Freeze can be displayed in a dysfunctional way when a horse becomes catatonic or rigid or unresponsive to all outside stimulus. To display this spectrum of bad stress to good stress, I add these words: from fight to play, from flight to yield, from freeze to thinking. This gives us a sense of how functional or dysfunctional the stress is that your horse might be feeling. The simple measure of functionality of stress is, do your friends still want to be with you when you're like this? Functional stress brings friends closer together. The reason why this is important to bring up in the beginning of freedom-based training is this: any stress a horse feels is going to be observable in their coping mechanisms. And these coping mechanisms will either be more or less functional for the partnership. The fewer tools we use to control our horses, the increasing need we will have to foster habits to lower stress and increase functional behavior. When you have a bridle on a horse and it starts to play, you can manage a certain level of exuberance. It can be a positive, lovely thing in your relationship. However, when you find yourself in a big open field, bareback and bridleless, and your horse starts to play, that can become frightening very quickly if you don't have the extrinsic motivators of either a bridle or a pocket full of carrots to refocus the horse. The very first thing we do in freedom-based training is to learn to read a horse and help them lower their stress levels to something that is functional in the relationship we want to create. What lowers stress for a horse? Leadership and movement. When we choose to let our horses be the leader, we are letting them be responsible for our stress levels. And when we choose to be the leader, we are choosing to help our horse with their stress levels. This course is all about how to read a horse and develop the feel and timing of knowing when to lead and when to follow to build the best possible relationship. For the sake of simplicity, when we consider stress in a horse, we ask ourselves, is the horse doing things I can partner with? Is it likely to get better or worse from here? What decisions do I need to make to perpetuate things getting better in an ongoing way in our relationship? What kind of leadership do I need to give my horse so that the stress levels stay positive for us in our development? If you're not sure how to answer these questions yet, don't worry. We learn these things as we study. When we think about the range of leadership from passive leadership to dominant leadership, we see that assertive is in the middle. The important thing to know about this is that horses only respond well to assertive leadership when their stress levels are at a reasonable level. In order to help a horse lower their stress levels to a reasonable level on any given day, you're going to have to choose between taking whatever time it takes to do it as a passive leader or to push them through the stage of intolerance as a dominant leader until their stress levels are lower. Assertive leadership will only be acceptable to a horse when their stress levels are already at a reasonable level. This course is about passive leadership leading into assertive leadership. I want to be clear though, if you have a time limit for achieving something, or if there's a safety issue at hand, you may need to use dominant leadership with good feel and timing to bring your horse's stress level down more quickly than passive leadership could accomplish the job. The big concept here is understanding stress coping mechanisms of fight, flight, and freeze, and the value of leadership to lower stress coping mechanisms into that more reasonable range of think, yield, and play. So far, we've talked about leadership, reading your horse, timing advance and retreat for yes answers, to evolve through tolerance, acceptance into enjoyment, and understanding the beauty of stress. It's a lot of ideas all put together. So what's the one unifying idea for creating depth in relationship? Flow. Flow can mean a number of things. For the purposes of this course and freedom-based training, we're going to use it to mean being in harmony with our horses. When you watch horses together in a herd, you will often see two horses that pair bond for a few minutes or a day or two or even perpetually. We are seeking to build a sort of pair bond between you and your horse. This pair bond starts with a state of flow. A state of flow exists when you are either matching your horse or are in complementary movements. Matching in terms of which direction you're facing. Which foot is farther forward than the other? How slow or fast is your breathing? This does not need to be exact, just similar in feeling or intensity. How tight are your muscles? How quick or slow are your movements? Where is your focus? Being similar to your horse or matching movements is synonymous with making them feel like you understand their point of view. You are a friend and easy to be with. The more a horse feels like it has friends and is not alone, the safer it feels and the more adaptable it will be to different situations. Safety often feels precarious to a horse, and it needs more of a leader than a friend to find comfort in the world. Finding flow as a leader is about making decisions before your horse does, and finding complementary movements to theirs, such as moving to stand between your horse and anything new or interesting. This signifies that if it turns out to be dangerous, you have it handled. You will protect your horse. Another way to be more of a leader than a friend is to spend more time watching the environment than your horse does. Can you see or hear a new thing before they do, and place yourself closest to it? Breathing as a friend with your horse is similar in energy or rhythm. Breathing as a leader is taking a stand to be complementary but different. For instance, when something particularly exciting happens and a horse will look at it strongly with their head and neck upright, and they breathe out a single breath in a fast, loud snort sort of way. If you can do this with your horse, sometimes they feel like you're a friend and the two of you will do this together. If your horse is breathing fast and hard in stress while you are breathing slow and steady in a complementary way, this might set the tone for them to follow your lead and settle. Being a leader is doing things you think your horse might want to do before your horse has the idea, like walking to the water trough and splashing it in a little so it occurs to your horse that it might indeed be thirsty, and what a good idea you had. Or crouching down and playing with the grass or hay before the horse notices that it's hungry. And then when your horse joins you in paying attention to the food, it's impressed with how well you knew what it liked. When you hear a noise, you might leave the area the horse is in and go look in the direction of the sound. This is not a matching act with the horse, but a complementary act. Being in flow with a horse as a friend is about letting the horse make decisions, and you matching the horse to the best of your ability. Being in flow with your horse as a leader is about making decisions your horse appreciates before your horse makes their next decision. Question yourself using the 2 states of flow as a guide. How good are you at being a friend to your horse? How good are you at being a leader to your horse? Our goal is a functional balance between leadership and friendship. The big concept here is flow is the intersection between leadership and fellowship. What percentage of the time do you find flow out of a leadership position? What percentage of the time do you find flow out of a following position? Now that we've talked about leadership, the 3 stages of learning, reading your horse, the beauty of stress, and theories on flow, we're ready to put it all together into practice. Here is the beginning work we're going to do to start exploring freedom-based training. First, walk around your horse's space with rhythm and confidence. And as you walk, notice if your horse seems to feel better at any particular distance or location around their body. Second, in a place you think might be acceptable to your horse, stop walking and match your horse, counting your breaths for as long as you think the horse might continue to feel better. Third, at the best possible feeling moment, pick a new place to match your horse in flow, only a few steps away from your last place of flow, so you can return to harmony as quickly as possible. Remember, if you want to read what is better and what is worse, think of the stress spectrum. If you and your horse can do it together and you both feel better afterwards, it's good stress. If you and your horse are divided by what happens, it's bad stress. Bad stress is fight, when the horse is pushing into you. That's a sign of worse feeling. Flight, when the horse is moving in a way that you cannot easily move with them. That's a sign of worse feeling. Freeze, when the ears and eyes stop moving. It's better than fight and flight, but it's a worse feeling than the thinking moments. Good stress is think. Each twitch of the ears is a moment that has more thinking. That's a sign of better feeling. There are other signs of thinking as well, but the ears are the easiest to see in the beginning. Yield, when a horse moves in an easy way, where a partner can easily match them step for step, each foot exactly in harmony. That is a sign of better feeling. Play, when a horse shows curiosity, interest, and a desire to interact with the things around them, with a gentleness appropriate to the situation. That is a sign of better feeling. In each moment you're in harmony with your horse, you want to ask yourself, is this going to get better or is this going to get worse? If you think it might get worse, fight or flight, start back at the beginning of the exercise, walking around, watching the environment until you see a sign of thinking, like the flick of an ear. That shows you're in a good place to be in flow with your horse again. As long as you think the horse is going to feel better, you can stay in one place of flow with them, counting your breaths. As soon as you feel you're at the peak moment of enjoyment, likely in that place, find the next place and start counting your breaths again. The goal is that you could be in flow with your horse in any position around their body for 8 breaths, knowing the horse is going to feel better continually during that time. When you get to the best feeling that's likely, move to the next place around them and repeat the process. In the beginning, it's better to move too soon than to move too late, because you want the horse to associate you with the best feeling possible in every place you choose to be in flow with them. Associations are strongest with the feeling that happened directly before the change. I'd like you to experiment with a variety of different places. Each of the 8 positions around your horse: front, back, left, right, and the 4 corners. And the 4 distances: the touching distance, the close but not touching distance, the medium distance, and the far away distance. Be wise about your choices, because that's what a good passive leader does. If moving to the next place on every ear flick feels right, do that. If you know your horse is going to keep feeling better, you can stay for longer, perhaps even 8 breaths in one place, watching many ear movements, signifying many thinking moments for the horse. If you think your horse has some fight or flight, you may choose to walk for a while around them, looking for a thinking moment to stop and find flow with them again. The more you walk, the more you help them lower their stress. The lower their stress is, the more time you will be able to spend in flow with them. Experiencing flow and harmony together to a peak moment of enjoyment before finding the next place of flow and harmony together, this is the foundation of your relationship that will make everything else you do together possible and enjoyable. Remember, in the beginning, this is a fact-finding mission. You're learning about your horse and which places that they're happy to flow with you longer and which places of flow need to be experienced for a shorter duration. If it gets worse, you stayed too long. If it gets better, you know you can potentially stay longer in that place. Learn your horse's likes and dislikes. Learn their strengths and their weaknesses. The better you know them, the better you'll be able to develop skills with them later, deepening your relationship with every new thing you enjoy together. If you were to guess right now, Do you already have an idea of your horse's preferences? To be in partnership closer or farther away? To be in partnership at the front or the back, the left or the right? In the beginning, we're not going to try and change the horses. We're only going to try and learn about them more deeply while honing our personal feel and timing around them. The big concept here is when choosing a place to be in flow with your horse, can you read the best moment to move to a different place? I hope you enjoyed this Freedom-Based Training 101 class. It's the first class in my online course for freedom-based training, and if you're interested in learning more, please contact me. If you'd like the homework sheet that goes along with this class, please click the link in the description below.